Welcome to the first ever Foodies Plus Hangout on air. Our panelists today are Aslin from the UK, head moderator for Foodies Plus and responsible for organizing this hangout. Karen, originally from Indonesia but now living in Germany, a regular contributor to Foodies Plus. Ken from Malaysia, a new friend of Foodies Plus. Today is the first time I actually meet Ken. Lisa, an old friend of Foodies Plus and columnist of Lisa's Italian Kitchen, originally from New Zealand, now living in France. Hi, Lisa. And finally, Nicholas from Australia, an old friend of Foodies Plus and a great cook. Hi, this is Noma Dimitri from Foodies Plus. I'm in the panel of a Foodies Hangout organized by Lynn, who you can see here. And we have with us a whole bunch of Foodies Plus members. And we're going to take just a few minutes to deal with what I will call a rice emergency. This is something that has happened to all of us and will probably happen to you if you're a novice or an experienced rice cooker, if you're cooking rice if you're not so comfortable with cooking rice. So the emergency is as follows. You've done whatever steps you need to do, whatever way you have chosen to cook your rice, rapid cooking in a rice cooker, in a pot or anything like that. Here it goes and it's boiling. And suddenly you arrive to this horrible moment where you notice that there is not enough water there really for the thing to cook. So you're seeing the water evaporating and you taste the rice, or you can just see it, and you know it's not going to be enough, and the rice is crunchy, will be crunchy, will not work. Now, this is what I'm calling a rice emergency. What do you do? So I'm going to ask Aslin first, what would she do in this particular emergency?
Simple, really. If put the kettle on, but if it is really evaporating very quickly, lower the heat down, put the kettle on, add half a cup of water just to keep the rice going while you're boiling your water, while the water's boiling, and then just add, say, another half to 1 cup, depending on how much you think the rice needs, and continue cooking it.
So your method is you accept the fact that you can add water in the middle of and use what you think you need and keep going as you are going.
Yeah,
right?
Because I have often had I use the rice cooker more often than not to cook rice, but sometimes if it's just a small amount, I do it on the stove. So I say I would cook rice on the stove a couple of times a week, and more often than not, while I'm doing the water, I'm talking to a child. So often I lose count. I really do, and so that actually happens to me quite often. So I'll just add water and continue and finish cooking.
Perfect. Lisa, your turn. What would you do in this emergency?
I would do exactly the same thing as Lynn. I would probably, if it doesn't have a lid on it, when I turn the heat down, I would put the lid on to keep in the steam so that it keeps cooking until the kettle's boiled. But pretty much, it's not that much of an emergency.
No.
The bottom is a bigger emergency.
Yes, give us a tougher question, man.
Okay, I will give you a tough one. Do the rest of you agree? Nicholas, do you agree? Would you think?
Yeah, you just add hot water. If it's rapid
Just
boiling, the thing is, if you're doing absorption, you're not supposed to take the lid off anyway, so it's very difficult to actually know. I mean, you would actually probably smell the burning, at which point I'd say go and get a new pan.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm cooking with the steamer, so when it happens, just pour some water on the rice, not on the steamer. Pour some water on the rice and steam again for a couple of minutes, 5 minutes maybe. It also will help when you cook in a rice cooker and then the rice is still hard. You can also steam it again with some more water.
Okay.
That's quite interesting, actually. So if your rice is undercooked, you can always steam the rice to cook it then, can't you? The way the Indonesians do it.
So that was emergency number one. And, you know, we have to understand, for people that don't often cook rice. This is a serious emergency. They just look at it or they smell the little burning thing and they say, oh, what the hell do I do now? This thing is sensitive. It's supposed to be covered, blah, blah, blah. So it's helpful for them to know that it's actually fairly simple. You just add hot water and you continue where you left off. Emergency number 2, which is the real emergency, is again, we're in the same situation. The rice is cooking and suddenly you realize that it's cooked already and there is still liquid. So you're gonna get mush, okay? The first thing, the question now has 2 branches. The one branch is, can you do something to minimize the mushiness so you don't get like a glob of nothing, basically, of Play-Doh at the end? That's question number 1 for the crisis. Question number 2, if you can't and you end up with a mush, what are you going to do with it? Are you just going to throw it to the garbage, or is there a nice thing you can do with it? So this is a one question with 2 branches. So who wants to start?
Okay, is it the name used in Western world, porridge?
Yeah, but porridge over here means Quaker oats, Ken.
Okay, so what is the correct terms, Asli?
Rice porridge.
Rice porridge.
Okay, we add a bit more water, a lot of waters, and then we start to put in meat. We start to put in some vegetables or whatsoever. We can have fish porridge, or like the chicken rice that I'm talking about. Okay, on the next day, okay, I can tell you what I do with this. On the next day, I have some rice which I can't finish. Okay, I can still some chicken soup there. So I just make the soup and the chicken rice and become a chicken porridge, and plus some of the meat. So this time the meat I will put it into boil until it's very, how to describe that, a porridge form.
To summarize, Ken's method says, okay, you screwed up your rice, you ended up with mush, don't worry about it. Save it and then mix it with some nice broth and some meat or pieces of chicken or something spicy and turn it into a rice porridge soup. It's a delicious thing that people all over Asia eat on a daily basis, especially for breakfast. You put a little bit of soy sauce, whatever spices you want, and it turns into a delicious porridge soup. And that is Ken's solution. Moving on to Lisa. Lisa, what would you do with a mush, and how would you prevent it if it was happening?
Wow, actually, I don't know. Actually, it hasn't happened to me before, but I would force my kids to eat it and tell them to be grateful that I put lunch on the table for them.
Yeah.
That's it. I actually haven't had a major problem with mush up until now, so I'm not really sure. The porridge idea sounds great, but I would probably force my family to eat it anyway.
Okay, that's a lovely one. That's a lovely one. The enforcer, Lisa the
Pretend that was
enforcer.
the idea.
Eat what I make. Yes.
Sorry, I
Perfect.
was just going to say, Julia Child always said, never admit your mistakes in the kitchen. Serve it up like it was meant to be like that.
That's
Exactly.
wonderful.
Or blame it on the children. My children made this.
Nicholas, what
Yes.
would you do?
Oh, look, if it's just at the point before the mush, I'd seriously just drain the water off, and then just put the lid on and just sort of do the last couple of minutes with steam. But if I mean that's never happened to me, unfortunately, especially with the absorption method, because you don't know until you actually take the lid off whether it's mush or not. If I did have mush, oh man, this is top of my head stuff now. I like the idea of the porridge. I reckon you could use it as a filler in meatballs or something. Possibly rice pancakes. You could maybe saute vegetables, throw it into the rice, and sort of mold patties or something, and then saute them. Rice soup. Look, I think the bottom line is I try not to waste it, and the bottom line is I would give it to the kids.
Great. So Nicholas underscore, there's lots of creative things we can do with it. Rice patties is something that I like to do as well. They're very easy. You just mold them with whatever, with scallions, with whatever you want, and just saute them either in butter or oil. Um, and you can also stuff them in a tortilla with refried beans and avocado and things like that, Mexican way. There's lots of things to do. So if you screw up your rice, don't despair. It can still be a fun thing to do. Lynn, things to add, things to summarize?
I don't make mistakes with rice. In my mouth as a baby. And look, the first thing I ate as a baby must have been rice. Okay, so those of us who grew up cooking rice, anyway, I give classes on cooking rice. So this is the solution, as it were. If there is still enough, depends on how much water there is left still. If there is still enough water to drain it off, do so. Drain the rice. And put it back in the saucepan, and you've just basically done the rapid boil method. If the water is too little to actually drain off, put a tea towel over the saucepan, cover it with a lid, and it ought to absorb the water, the excess water. The other method that I have never practiced, never done, but I have seen it on in more than one source, is to actually take a small heat-proof bowl, fill it up with salt, make a little hole in the rice, and just place the salt there and cover it back with a saucepan. But I suppose I would suggest even putting the tea towel over it and cover it back with the lid. Sorry. And after about 10-15 minutes, the salt is supposed to have absorbed the extra moisture.
Basically, to summarize this little kind of rice tips by Foodies is, your first line of defense, if you've put too much water and you're going to turn in the mush, is get rid of the water. Get rid of the water. If it's too much, tilt the pot, get rid of it. Find a way to evaporate it by leaving the lid off or putting towels or even this Lynn's salt bomb inside. But if it's still a mush, then use our creative tips to do it. Many thanks to our panelists, and thanks to all of you for joining us.